Today, we are going to be talking about travel with an organization called Road Scholar. If you all remember, I took my granddaughter on a Road Scholar trip a couple of years ago, and we did a show about that on Hey Boomer. If you haven't seen it, it's precious. Oh, I know I'm a little biased, but I really think you would enjoy it. And I am planning another Road Scholar trip this coming summer with her little brother. So this is his turn to go with Grandma. But Road Scholar is more than just a grandchild trip. They have educational adventures that go just about anywhere in the world that you would want to go. And they go as families, as groups, as solo travelers. And so we're going to be talking about all of that. The other thing that you may not have realized if you are familiar with Road Scholar is that it is a not-for-profit organization. And so when the pandemic hit and we could not travel, they were faced with a lot of challenges. And we are going to be talking about how they have managed those challenges, how they made some really amazing pivots, and what that has meant for them then, and what it means now going forward, now that we can travel again. The Road Scholar website, they describe themselves as a diverse community of knowledge seekers and explorers, united in the belief that lifelong learning is a vital part of overall well-being. We believe in living life to the fullest at every age by experiencing the world and not just by looking at it, by meeting new people, touching history where it happened, and delving deep into the cultures and landscapes we explore. And we here at Hey Boomer definitely believe in living life to its fullest. So I'm looking forward to talking with our guest today. Hello, Hey Boomer listeners. If you are joining us for the first time, let me introduce myself. I am Wendy Green, and I am the host of Hey Boomer. Hey Boomer is a show that provides thoughtful, entertaining conversations with scientists and thought leaders and authors and performers. And we focus on staying engaged in life, making a difference, and enhancing our purpose in life. So you are now in the right place. I want to share some never too old news with you. I use that as my hashtag, never too old. And so I wanted to share a couple of stories with you. A young man named Larry Trachtenberg finished this year's New York City Marathon in just over 5 hours, 51 years after he ran in the first New York City Marathon in 1970. If you want to do the math, he was 16 when he ran then, so he is now 67. Good for Larry. And MJ Eberhardt, who goes by the trail name Nimble Will Nomad, became the oldest person ever to complete the 2,193-mile Appalachian Trail at age 83. Way to go, MJ. So we are never too old. You know how you have said to your friends in the past, did you see that last show that Hey Boomer had, the last guest they had, and you wanted to talk to them about it, and they missed it? So what you need to do is you need to send them to the HeyBoomer.biz website and have them subscribe. In fact, do it now. We'll be back. We'll wait for you for a minute, but go to the website, subscribe, and then you'll get the Monday email that will remind you of the show, that will give you the link, and you'll get a Wednesday email that will send you to the blog, tell you about who's our upcoming guest, and send you a link to the show this past Monday, or this one today, that you may have missed. So it's Wendy, that's my email, Wendy at heyboomer.biz. The website is heyboomer.biz. So go and subscribe. Okay. I am going to bring our guests on, Kelsey and Barbara. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hello.
So glad to have you here today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, but let me take a minute and introduce you. So Barbara Winard is a lifestyle blogger, writer, and inveterate wanderer with her focus on women over 60 who love to travel. Barbara retired sort of after a career with WNET Channel 13, New York City's public television station, followed by a stint with the Asia Society, where she produced films and print materials for adults and children about Asian culture. She then spent 5 years as a freelance producer for films and videos in countries around the world, and finally worked for 25 years as senior editor for 2 online encyclopedias for Scholastic Publishing. At age 72, Barbara reinvented herself as a travel blogger, and her site is TheBabyBloomer.blog, TheBabyBloomer.blog. I'm going to show you that, and I'll show it to you again at the end. But it's TheBabyBloomer.blog. I really enjoy some of the blogs that she's put up there, so check it out. And Kelsey Perri is a travel writer, originally from, name your town, Kelsey?
Mosinee.
Mosinee, I knew I would get it wrong, Wisconsin. Kelsey holds a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from Goddard College and is the creator of Hipstorical, a travel blog about repurposed places. She was bit by the travel bug when she studied abroad in Ireland during her sophomore year at St. Mary's College. And for the past 5 years, Kelsey has worked on the communications team at Rhodes Scholar, which, as we said, is an educational travel organization for older adults. She lives in Providence, Rhode Island with her husband, their 6-month-old baby, Johnny, and their rescue pup, Penny, but she told me he's now 7 months old. Johnny is, not the puppy.
Yes.
So welcome you all. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I always like to start by getting to know you a little bit. So if you could just fill us in a little bit on your stories, where your passion for travel came from. Kelsey, you want to start?
Sure. I can start. That's okay. So as Wendy said, I grew up in a small town in northern Wisconsin. My family didn't do all that much traveling when I was a kid, and all of my siblings were really into sports. My family loved sports, and I was not an athlete. So I became a big reader. I was the one under the bleachers reading books. So that was really my first foray. That's how I think of my first foray into traveling, was through reading, through books, whether it was to Neverland or, fictional places like that, or just around the world. And that's how I experienced travel to begin with. So, and then like you said, I studied abroad in Ireland when I was a sophomore in college. I was very lucky to get to travel for a whole year. And while I was in Ireland, I also traveled to Italy, Germany, Spain, England, and Sweden. I think that covers it. Nice. So I was really lucky to have that experience, and that was it for me. I was just, like you said, bit by the travel bug. So I was an English major in college, and I have an MFA in creative writing. So then after I finished my MFA, I moved to Boston, and didn't really know that there was an opportunity to have a career in travel, because to me, everyone just books their own travel online. It just seems like, I didn't know that that was really an opportunity. And I ended up getting my first job in travel when I came to Boston. And then from there, I discovered Rhodes Scholar and realized that I could combine my love of travel with my love for learning, and also to work for a nonprofit, which was really important to me. And it just really seemed like a perfect fit. So that's where I am now, and I am the director of PR at Rhodes Scholar, and I feel really lucky to be able to introduce people to these amazing experiences as a writer and now the PR director there. So
awesome.
that's my story.
Thanks. And as Barbara tells us her story, why don't you all share places that you've been that you have really loved? Share that in the chat.
Well, I got the same start as Kelsey. I was a reader and I started reading about the Himalayas, I think, when I was about 12, and vowed someday to get there, and actually did get there, went to Tibet and Nepal and all over the mountains. And it was nothing like I imagined, but that's another story. Disaster story, but that's another story, which I ended up writing about. But I was a daydreamer and couldn't wait to get out and travel. And after I got out of college, I was an English major as well. And I started traveling all through my 20s, 30s, and 40s. I got married for the first time when I was 40 and had a child when I was 43. And for 20 years, I traveled all over Asia, especially India, Indonesia, Japan, China, through South America and Europe, usually by myself. And then when I got married, I traveled some with my husband and certainly with my daughter. And I think I've made her a good traveler. And although she lives too far away in London,
Yeah.
what I did to myself, I shot myself in the foot. But and when I got laid off, I decided to write about my travels because I had never written about any place I had traveled to. I'd always written about other things. And I've been writing blogs and magazine articles. And during the pandemic, when you couldn't go anywhere, I wrote about memories of travels and dreams of travel. And on a number of social media outlets where everybody shares their travels. There's some wonderful over 60 female travel sites where women are just dying to get out and hit the road again. Women over 60, over 70, over 80. So I find it all very inspirational.
Oh, Road Scholar has a Women of Road Scholar on Facebook too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank
I'm
you,
on it.
Barbara. You're on it. I'm on it. So Talik, thank you for letting us know. Cuba has been the favorite country to travel to for Talik. We're looking for others from the rest of you. Kelsey, tell us the history. I know Road Scholar was not always called Road Scholar, but that's about all I know. So what's the history?
Yeah, so Road Scholar began in 1975. We were originally called Elderhostel. A lot of people, I think, still remember the name Elderhostel even more than the name Road Scholar. So it started in 1975 by two friends, Marty Knowlton and David Bianco, and it really began. It began at 5 New England colleges who offered programs to 220 participants all across New England, and back then it was really more about bringing older adults to college campuses in the summer when they weren't being used. So people would stay in the dorms and take classes in the lecture halls. And it was really about taking academic classes and just offering really affordable lodging. And then, we've evolved over the years to become really more of an educational travel organization with a variety of lodging. We still do have programs that stay on college campuses, that stay at retreat centers, just very kind of no frills lodging. But then we also stay at, 3 and 4 star hotels. So it's really just, we have such a variety of things now that we offer. We have thousands of programs in hundreds of countries and all 50 states. But we still remained a nonprofit. So we stayed true to our nonprofit identity and our educational mission. So that's the one thing that's really hasn't changed throughout the years.
Yeah, I was really surprised to learn that it was a nonprofit. So when the pandemic hit and all travel stopped, how did that affect you?
Well, because we're a nonprofit, we were able to fundraise. So that was worked in our benefit. So a lot of us were pulled into a fundraising campaign that I was a part of as well. And so with the help of our donors, we were able to, stay alive throughout the pandemic. But another thing that we did that we kind of pivoted during the pandemic was I was pulled onto the team also who developed our virtual lecture series first. That was the first thing we did. Within, I think, 2 weeks of everybody being locked down, we had our first virtual lecture. And so those were 1-hour lectures, and they were free for all from March until I think, the fall of 2020. They were totally free. We were just looking for a way to continue creating educational programming, staying connected with people. We didn't know how long this was going to last, as nobody did. And so we wanted to just make sure that we had some way to stay connected with people and continue to pursue our mission. So first we just had the 1 hour lectures, and then once we saw that those were very those were successful, and also we saw that this pandemic was going to keep us locked down a little longer than we all thought, and travel was really going to be stalled for a while, we started to develop our virtual lectures, or our multi-day programs, which is our online courses. So those really were aiming to create the Rhodes Scholar experience online. So we really thinking of it, they weren't just online courses, and they aren't, we still do offer them. They're not just online courses, it's really trying to create the travel experience online. And a big part of that is, everything we do is live for multi-day programs, which is different than a lot of the online courses that you might be seeing. And they're all super interactive. So you're getting to learn still from our same instructors that you would learn from in an in-person program. They do a lot of field trips where they walk around with a camera and show you the places as if you were walking around, an old town in Croatia or something like that. And then you get an opportunity to interact with them, ask questions, do live Q&A. You're on camera so they can see you. You can see all of the other participants. They participate in group discussion and even social hours and things like that. So it's really more interactive and has been a huge lifeline for people isolated at home during the pandemic. So that's another way that we've been able to kind of stay alive during the pandemic. And, obviously being in travel for adults over 50 has been a tough business to be in, but luckily that was also the demographic that was the first to get vaccinated. So we saw a huge influx of enrollments as soon as the vaccinations became available. As soon as we even heard news of vaccinations being available, people started to enroll again because, everybody has this feeling that they missed out on all this time, and they have a lot to make up for, to catch up. So I think that really, and like I said, we're definitely devoted to our donors who were there for us and stood by us during the pandemic. So gotta thank them too.
And I've been reading recently that a lot of women who had been traveling solo are now traveling either solo or with people they meet in groups, because they feel more comfortable about the countries they're visiting and the rules they have for visiting countries. And meeting people as you travel and having some kind of security and having some people talk to you about what you're seeing, educational background, is wonderful. And I took my first trip ever on a tour with Rhodes Scholar 2 years ago. I went to Mount Rushmore because no one I knew wanted to go with me, and have since traveled with them. And, it's a great way to meet people and to travel as a solo woman.
Well, I wanted to ask you more about that solo travel, Barbara, because I guess when I went with my granddaughter, it was solo because it was just me and her. But it's just something that I didn't think I would feel comfortable with. And yet you were telling me how you've met so many people. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you solo travel and what that experience is like?
Well, when I was younger, I would work until I had enough money and then quit and take off and go someplace where I didn't know anybody and didn't know anything. And it was a wonderful feeling to feel you could overcome obstacles, grow, learn about the world, meet new people. And I did it for many years. And now it's a little bit more difficult just because I'm 73 and I've got a bum knee. And so I looked for different ways to travel, either solo. I'm taking my husband on a Rhodes Scholar trip in May for the first time. He's never been on a tour ever, so that'll be an interesting experience. So I think you can teach old dogs new tricks. I mean, there's lots of different ways to travel. But as a solo traveler, you can either get your own room on a tour, or you can ask them to pair you up with somebody, or you can meet somebody on the Rhodes Scholar site or on another site and talk. I know that one of the sites that I'm on very often, People have been on Road Scholar trips and they'll say, would you like to go on a trip? Would you be interested in traveling with me? So there's a lot of different ways to do it now. I still like traveling by myself, but and a lot of women certainly still do. I mean, a lot of women will take off by themselves and travel slower, travel more in depth, stay in places longer. There's lots of different ways to do it.
Yeah, and I think talking about traveling on a tour, so I know I initially, when I learned about Elderhostel years ago, or any of these tours, I think about loading a whole bunch of people on a bus, and you drive by these sites, and they're telling you what you're seeing, but you don't experience it. Road Scholar is so different than that. So can you talk us through a little bit about the Road Scholar experience?
Do you want to go first, Barbara? I'm curious to hear what you say first.
Well, I wrote a blog. That's how I first started writing a blog, was that after this trip to Mount Rushmore, I got in touch with Road Scholar and I said, I'd like to write about my experience as somebody who's never traveled on a tour before. And at first it was strange to me because I went to the same places other people went to. And I was with people some of whom I had a lot in common with, some of whom I didn't at all. And I found that the more I traveled with them, the more I talked to people, the more I found I had in common with people, or the differences were interesting. I met a woman on the first trip and we had nothing in common and we're still friends. We're still in touch with each other 2 years later. And then I went to Portugal on a winter trip with Road Scholar, and it was the same thing. And then at the end of the trip, you can either go ahead of time or stay longer. I stayed by myself after the trip ended, and my daughter came to Portugal to meet me, and we traveled together.
Oh, nice.
So it's really nice because it can get you to a country and get you familiar with a country, and then you can go off on your own if you would like to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll kind of add to that also is, because we are not for profit, our mission is all around education. So what you're going to get with Road Scholar compared to going with other groups is really, it's all about the learning. So everything is experiential. Like you said, you're not just driving by in a bus. You're really going to, meet with the pasta maker and learn how to make pasta in Italy. You're getting your hands in there. You're experiencing things. You're meeting the locals. And we're also introducing you to expert faculty everywhere around the world and all across the US too. I think a lot of other organizations or companies don't do as much programming in the US. There's so much to see in our own country. So that's another thing that sets us apart, I think, a little bit too. And I think it's, like I said, everything is very academic experience. To me, it feels more like you're on a college field trip. That's kind of like how I think of it, is you're with a bunch of other people who are very interested in learning. And as Barbara said, because you all share that passion and love for learning, that also creates this like camaraderie that, you really can't package, but is just created by all these people with the same shared passions and intellectual curiosity. So that ends up bringing people together in such an interesting and sometimes life-changing way. And we hear that all the time, that people meet friends on programs, especially solo travelers, and they travel together again in the future, which is just really cool to hear. So,
well, I know my experience with my granddaughter. We went to Chincoteague Island, and we went seine netting, and we captured little critters, and we looked at them under microscopes, and they talked about the ecology. And I mean, it was a great learning experience for the adults and the kids. And then we had a low country boil at the end, which was even better.
all of the senses, engaging all of the senses, the taste, the
That's
feel,
right.
the touch, the smell, everything.
That's right.
And it's not only academic. I mean, I remember when we were on the Mount Rushmore trip, we heard from a woman who was a cattle rancher telling us what her daily life was like. And then we had Native Americans come in and talk to us about what it was like being sent to schools and not being able to speak their language growing up. I mean, it's such a variety of people talking to you.
Yeah, it's great. So Doris says her love of travel was sparked when she was an exchange student and spent the summer of 1965 in Turkey. Thank you, Doris. Who else has been somewhere? So I see that my former boss, Bruce, is on, and we did a lot of travel security kinds of things. So that sparks the question, what about security? I know, Barbara, you alluded to that as a solo traveler and feeling security of the group, but what is Road Scholar doing to provide the security, health-wise, safety-wise, all of that?
Yeah, well, the number one thing we're doing is requiring vaccinations for all of our travelers and group leaders. And it was a tough decision to come to, but I think it was the right one. And it's really allowing everybody who travels with us to feel safe knowing that everyone in the group is going to be vaccinated. And then the other thing that's really helpful right now, and we're starting to hear, especially with those traveling internationally, is that it can be really complicated to figure out if you're traveling to a different country what you need, because every single country is different. Everyone is requiring different things. They have different online platforms where you need to submit your vaccination cards or show that your proof of COVID tests and things like that. So that's another thing that's really important right now. And we're hearing from people is that when they travel with Road Scholar helps them navigate all of that, those complicated things. And a lot of it is technological too. Like, I think to travel to France, you needed like a QR code that was unique to you that you showed at the airport. Just very, for anybody would be confusing, especially because these things are being developed so quickly. And so, yeah, I think that's another benefit of traveling with Road Scholar right now, is because we're helping our participants navigate those confusing things and make sure that they're safe while they're traveling. So, but as you said, especially with our solo travelers, we hear that all the time too, is they just feel more secure traveling with a group, so that they know that, especially solo female travelers, that they feel like they're part of the group. So.
And of course, Road Scholar will make all your plane reservations, or you can do it on your own if you like, either way. And I just want to add something that just yesterday I posted something about traveling to Turkey, and shows you the difference between traveling on your own and traveling with a group, is that I landed in Turkey with my daughter like 1:00 in the morning, and we arranged to have a car pick us up at the airport to take us to our hotel. And they didn't show up, and we waited and waited, and we were very uncomfortable. We didn't know anybody in Turkey. We were exhausted from the flight. And finally, everybody left the airport, and we were there, just the two of us. And then I saw somebody standing with a sign that said Wizard. And my name is Winard, and they spelled my name wrong. So we managed to get to the hotel, but this is what happens when you travel on your own.
Yeah, and as women, there are greater risks traveling on your own, and for anybody. I mean, if you're walking around like you don't know where you're going and you don't know what you're doing, it's nice to have a guide that says, okay, this is where we're going and this is what we're doing now. And
that's very nice. It's also nice to explore, I think, but it's nice to have a combination too. I mean, there's so many choices now. There's so many different ways you can go.
Yeah. Now, Kelsey, you've gone on a couple of Road Scholar trips, and you are not an older adult. So how did that work out?
That's true. I've been, I think, on 7 or 8 Road Scholar programs at this point in my just over 5 years that I've been there. I've gone I also went to South Dakota, as Barbara did, on our Great American Get Together. I went to Cuba. We have lots of programs in Cuba. Because of our educational status, we've been able to operate programs in Cuba since 1997, I believe. So that was an amazing trip. My husband got to go on that with me as well. And I even got to go to Antarctica.
Wow.
I think 2018, I want to say, which was unbelievable. Just somewhere I never thought I would ever go, but was presented with the opportunity and had an amazing experience. It's hard to believe that I even went there. And my husband and I also went on our honeymoon, actually, with Road Scholar, if you can believe that, to Galapagos. We did, to Galapagos and Machu Picchu, which was just incredible. So, like something that we hear from solo travelers too is that Road Scholar creates such a welcoming experience and a welcoming atmosphere. And we definitely felt that as whether I was traveling by myself or with my husband. I also traveled with a coworker as well to Antarctica. So there's just this sense of love of learning that transcends age, and everybody has that in common. So, and I think the participants have always just kind of pulled us under their wings and treated us like kids or grandkids, and and appreciated our perspective on things too. And everybody likes to get a little behind the scenes, with a Rhodes Scholar employee too, to tell us their opinions and give us their feedback, which is always nice. And it's such a... No, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was going to say that Rhodes Scholar rates each trip according to the person's ability to travel. And so there are some trips that are really, like professional hiking type of trips, and other trips that are much slower and easier. So if you have any doubts about travel at whatever age you are, you can choose the trip that's right for you.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Thank you, Barbara. So I'm curious, travel so broadens our perspective on the world, and you write about your travels, Barbara, now in various forms, as you were saying. What have you learned about yourself from traveling?
Well, one thing I was realizing was that when I was younger, I traveled to take things in. I wanted to learn about the world, learn about myself, experiencing things myself. And now that I'm older, I kind of see it as traveling to give things out. There are, and I mean, inspiration, information, my experiences as a traveler. And of course, I'm interested in others as well. But I do feel that traveling around the world has given me so much that I want to share it with other people. And one way I do it is in writing. And I also try to help people start writing travel journals themselves.
Oh, you do?
I think that's, it's, and also travel memories, not only trips you're on, and revisiting places you've been before to see how you've changed and how you've grown as a person. So I do feel that travel is constantly inspiring. I mean, some of the trips I was on, some of the Rhodes Scholar trips I was on, you'd see people who were 85 who were, I'd look out the window of my hotel and see them like hiking in the morning. If you can go, it's such a wonderful way to inspire your life and, tell your children, tell other people, share it with other people. So, I mean, I think it's transformative.
Yeah, I think it's transformative too. Kelsey, have you felt like travel has changed your life in some ways?
Oh, definitely. I mean, especially when I studied abroad in college, I mean, like I said, I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin and we didn't travel very much. So I didn't have a lot of exposure to people who were very different from me. And that's just one of my favorite things when I travel, is just getting to learn about different perspectives, learn about different ways of life. It just expands your understanding and your empathy for other people. And I think especially just the world that we're living in. And I've become very passionate about social justice. And I don't think that I would have that passion if it wasn't for travel.
Yeah. So where are you planning on going next, Barbara?
Well, I am going, let me see, I'm going to Florida. That's not all that exciting, but it will be very nice in January. And then in May, I'm going to Greece with Rhodes Scholar. And then in November, I am going to Rajasthan in India. Wow. I've traveled a lot in India, and this will be the first time I'm going on a tour. I'm going on a tour with a company called Cracking India that's run by a friend of mine, Anne-Marie McCarthy, and it's a very small group traveling throughout Rajasthan.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Kelsey, you've got the baby now. Do you have any trips coming up?
I do. Travel is going to look a little different with a 7-month-old in the next few years, but I definitely want to try to make him a traveler, as you said, Barbara, with your daughter. I don't force it on him, but introduce it to him and hope that he loves it as much as I do. I will be taking our first flight to Wisconsin this Christmas, so we'll be practicing flying and getting him used to that. And then if that goes well, then maybe California next April for his birthday. My husband's brother lives out there, and he got engaged recently, and they are getting married in Mexico next summer. So we are going to try to decide if we want to take the baby there, or if we want to, if we're going to be ready to leave him home without us. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm really looking forward to most sharing Ireland with him. That's where I studied abroad. I also lived there a few summers ago, and I don't know if you've had this, Barbara, or you, Wendy, you know, it's just the place that I've traveled that feels more like home to me than anywhere else. More than Wisconsin, where I grew up, more than Boston, where I spent 10 years, more than Providence, where I live now. I just feel it in my bones that when I'm there, I feel the most at home than anywhere else in the
Actually, I
world.
took my daughter to Ireland when she was 8. My husband and I took her, and we traveled throughout Ireland. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful trip. I'm not sure where I feel most at home, but I took my daughter back to Menorca, an island in the Mediterranean that I had first visited 40 years ago, and I wanted her to see the places I had seen when I was her age. And that's what was also a really meaningful trip, is to share your past with your kids.
Yeah.
And she had a great time. So
Yeah. And my heart is in the national parks. That's where I try to go whenever I can get a trip. And hopefully this grandson will pick a national park. Maddie and I went to Chincoteague, and then my other granddaughter, we went to Mammoth Cave, which is a national park. So yeah, that's where my heart is. So anyway, the Hey Boomer Show is about inspiring and motivating people who are 50 and older and looking for ways to stay engaged in life, to find a purpose in life. And I wonder if you guys have 2 or 3 takeaways that you would want to leave our audience with today.
well, I'd like to read you something if I could, because
sure.
I find this quote very inspiring. Actually, I think Kelsey knows it too. It was a quote by Sue Monk Kidd, a writer, a very good writer. And I found this quote very inspiring for women travelers, especially older women travelers. Life is filled with large and small renaissances all the way to the end. Older women, particularly, have cultivated the wild heart, the wise mind, and the daring spirit that makes third acts and late life renaissances possible. I mean, if you're going to err, you might as well do so on the side of audacity.
I love it.
So that's a reason to travel.
Yeah. And to check out Barbara's blog, the Baby Bloomer blog. Kelsey, what do you want to leave us with?
It's interesting to be asked for me to inspire your group, because I'm so inspired by our participants who are, you know, over the age of 50 every day. They empower me, especially the solo female travelers empower me every time I see them. As Barbara said, people in their 70s, 80s, even people in their 90s that travel with us. And that's so empowering to me. So I would say, look to those people to be empowered. But a few years ago, we did a communications campaign called Age Adventurously. And I think that I am so inspired by that concept every day when I'm working with Road Scholar, whether, you know, adventurous means hiking to Machu Picchu for you, or if that means living in another country for 6 weeks and learning the language, or if it's learning something new like cooking or pickleball. We have a lot of pickleball programs that's really popular right now. Or if it's just venturing out on your own for the first time as a widow. That's another thing that we hear a lot from a lot of our participants. You know, aging adventurously means something different for everybody, but I think that's just something to kind of inspire you. And today's generation of grandparents and great grandparents are just so not like their grandparents and great grandparents, which is why, you know, Elderhostel, elder was a word we had to change our name, because people just think of this generation of baby boomers and beyond, as we call them, as different than their grandparents. You're so much more adventurous and more interested in lifelong learning. And I just would encourage everybody to think about how you can age adventurously, whether that means, you know, right in your own communities or going out to see the world, you know, with Road Scholar. And if COVID has taught us anything, it's that life is short and your ability to travel can be snatched away at any moment. So when you can travel, make time for it, prioritize it, and make time for it now. So that's my other little piece of advice.
That's great. You guys are wonderful. And the Road Scholar website is roadscholar.org. But there are so many trips out there. And as Barbara said, they're all ranked at different levels of abilities. So go check it out. Come on a trip with me. I'm always looking for another trip. So yeah, we're going on a trip with Barbara. She's ready.
I'll take it.
So Let's see. There's a question there. This has been covered already. But does Road Scholar plan custom trips for people with a special interest? For example, plan a trip around winemaking in Croatia.
Well, we have a huge array of programs. I'm not sure about winemaking in Croatia. We definitely have wine programs and we definitely have Croatia programs. So if you go to roadscholar.org/find an adventure and put hyphens between find and adventure, that'll take you to our search page and you can search by whatever you want to learn about. So if you want to learn about wine, food and wine, you can filter by that. If you want to learn about pickleball, if you want to learn about cooking, whatever you want to learn about, you can filter that way by what you want to learn. You can filter by destination, you can filter by date, anything like that. So I would definitely encourage you to go check that out. As far as custom programs, we do private charter programs. I believe it's roadscholar.org/groups is where you can go to learn about that. And we might be able to tweak the itineraries and tweak the learning for you to really customize it to what you want. But usually people choose one of our itineraries that we already offer and then just kind of go with everybody, only with the people in their group, so friends and family.
Yeah.
And of course, there's also photography, Road Scholar photography groups, painting, writing, all that stuff too.
Hiking, I mean, just about anything you want to learn about, you can learn about with Road Scholar. So
thank you, Steve. That's a great question. Let me tell you about who's going to be my guest next week, because I am excited about this one too. Her name is Juliet Fay, and Juliet is an award-winning best-selling author of 6 novels. And she wrote, her newest book is called Catch Us When We Fall. And the story is about a woman named Cass Macklin, who has been on her own since she was 18 years old. She has dated brilliant, troubled Ben McGreevy, but they drank their way through their 20s, growing more addicted and less able to hold down jobs as time went on. Now Ben is dead and Cass is broke, homeless, scared, and pregnant. So Juliet in this story tackles some of the challenges of addiction, family, support, and recovery. It really was a excellent book, page turner, and did address quite a few of the issues that face people with addictions. So it should be a very interesting show. I encourage you all to join us next Monday. And Kelsey and Barbara, what a pleasure to have you two on.
Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, I want to go on a trip with you guys.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. Well, I want to remind you all that we are never too old to set another goal and dream a new dream. And my name is Wendy Green, and this has been Hey Boomer.